Hello and welcome to the last mixtape. My name's Stephen White, and on this week's show we talk about Kneecap, Glastonbury, Josh Johnson and the price of protest. But first, everything that you ever watched that you thought was revolutionary was approved for you to see by a corporate lawyer. Whenever anything gets through that isn't, those people usually face swift consequences. Not my words, but the words of American stand-up comedian Josh Johnson. Why, Stephen, I hear you ask, dear listener, and indeed dear viewer, am I quoting American comedian Josh Johnson at the beginning of this week's show? Well, dear listener, and indeed dear viewer, I thought that this week we delve into Kneecap, Glastonbury and the price of protest. This week's episode would delve into the ongoing controversy around Kneecap and their possible cancellation from Glastonbury. Through the lens of Josh Johnson's quote at the beginning, we will examine just how subversive art is treated in mainstream spaces. Let us start with the facts. Kneecap are still, as of now, booked to perform at Glastonbury 2025. But that could change. Clips from the past performances have resurfaced. One showing a member of the group shouting, "The only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local MP," another referencing Hamas and Hezbollah. These comments are under police investigation and have led to mounting pressure, both from Conservative and Labour MPs, calling for their removal from the Glastonbury lineup. Eden Sessions, a separate UK festival, has already pulled them. The fallout was swift, and the apology from the band even swifter. But for some, including the families of murdered MPs Joe Cox and David Amess, it wasn't enough. The following is Kneecap's response. They want you to believe that words are more harmful than genocide. Establishment figures, desperate to silence us, have combed through hundreds of hours of footage and interviews, extracting a handful of words from months or years ago to manufacture moral hysteria. Let's be unequivocal. We do not and have never supported Hamas or Hezbollah. We condemn all attacks on civilians, always. It is never okay. We know this more than anyone, given our nation's history. We also reject any suggestion that we would seek to incite violence against any MP or individual ever. An extract of footage deliberately taken out of context is now being exploited and weaponised as if it were a call to action. This distortion is not only absurd, it is a transparent effort to derail the real conversation. All 2 million Palestinian people in Gaza are currently being starved to death by Israel. At least 20,000 children in Gaza have been killed. The British government continues to supply arms to Israel, even after scores of NHS doctors warned Keir Starmer in August that children were being systematically executed with sniper shots to the head. Instead of defending innocent people or the principles of international law, the powerful in Britain have abetted slaughter and famine. This is where the real anger and outrage should be directed towards. To the Amess and Cox families, we send our heartfelt apologies. We never intended to cause you hurt. Kneecap's message has always been and remains one of love, inclusion and hope. This is why our music resonates across generations, countries, classes and cultures and has brought hundreds of thousands of people to our gigs. No smear campaign will change that. Suddenly, days after calling out the US administration at Coachella to applause and solidarity, there is an avalanche of outrage and condemnation by the political classes of Britain. The real crimes are not in our performances. The real crimes are the silence and complicity of those in power. Kneecap. And that's where Josh Johnson comes in. In that stand-up show that I was talking about earlier, Johnson remarks about how protest is almost brand management now, that it's something that is pre-approved for us to see. There is indeed a facade of protest sometimes within music. We talked about it last week where protest in the past is more preferable than protest in the present. This is the tightrope that Kneecap walk, because when it is less so, when it is more raw, when it is more confrontational and asks uneasy questions, then all of a sudden it's no longer welcome and needs investigation. It needs other people to tell you whether or not this is right or wrong. It needs them to explain their art to people for whom art is inexplainable. Indeed, Kneecap's name, their performances, their music, their lyrics are all sources of provocation, provoking the mainstream, provoking the higher-ups, provoking those that would punch down, and indeed the people who are punching down at them right now. Much like the situationist art movement of the 1960s that believed that subverting expectations and subverting meaning had some way of subverting the system itself, Kneecap have used that subversion to make people very uncomfortable. It's very interesting then that watching how politicians and how people in that sphere engage with art, engage it in such a literal sense and do not get subversion or commentary or subtext only if that art is either very old and pre-approved or it is something they are more comfortable with. This, as I say, should worry us because who are they to decide? Who are they to lean on people like Glastonbury and others and say, we don't think you should have this art in your space? Maybe there's something about the reaction to Kneecap and their performances and what they said at Coachella. From everything from the British government to the investigation into the band themselves to the dredging up of old performance pieces that are themselves taken out of context from appearing on stage. There's something about it that should make us all feel uncomfortable. There's something about that says that maybe the art that we consume, maybe the art that we engage with, is in and of itself censored in a way we weren't quite aware of. This is about what happens when the threat of political pressure is enough to make institutions, even countercultural ones like Glastonbury, think twice. Because if Kneecap is pulled, it will send a message to every young, politically outspoken act coming up. Don't push it, don't be too direct, don't make anyone uncomfortable who has a seat at the table. Kneecap's manager put it clearly. This is about warning young acts that protest has consequences, and he's right. Even if Glastonbury doesn't cancel them, the fear itself becomes the control. But there's also resistance. A growing number of artists have signed a petition in support of Kneecap, including Massive Attack, Fontaines DC and others who know how dangerous this kind of precedent can be. This isn't about agreeing with every lyric, it's about defending the principle that artists must be free to challenge systems of power, especially when those systems include the very festivals they play. Massive Attack have long been outspoken about Palestine, as have the Fontaines DC and acts like Damien Dempsey, who also came out in support of Kneecap. When artists stand in solidarity, they recognise the stakes. So why do a second video on Kneecap? Well, quite a lot has happened in the last week that would distress me as somebody who so fervently believes in art as a form of expression, expression as a form of protest, and protest as a form of art. Music says something about us. The art we create says something about us. The art that we create is the fruit on the tree of our culture. And what fruit we bear says something about us in the moment. I don't believe for a second that Kneecap support Hezbollah or Hamas. I don't believe for a second on the other side that the people criticising Kneecap or even criticising their name or throwing their spaghetti at the wall to see what fits believe in what they are saying. I think the inclusion or the mission creep of governments into our spaces is something we should all be worried about. If it were to happen, if Kneecap were to be banned or cancelled from Glastonbury, and they have been cancelled from the Eden Project Festival already, and that should worry us. But for something such as big as Glastonbury, something with a history of counterculture behind it, a narrative at the very least, the counterculture behind it, if that were to happen, even that the conversation is happening, even that in the House of Commons it has been heavily implied that maybe that is the thing to do, should worry us. There is, and I've said before in one of the podcasts, that people on the far right and on the right do not create great art because they lack the imagination to do so, because they are so literal. You cannot take art literally or at face value. We spoke about the situationists a bit earlier in this week's episode, just a bare mention of them, but that idea has resonated through all great art. I love Tony Wilson and Factory Records and Joy Division themselves. Their name is an example of situationalism. Taking something with a certain type of meaning and connotation to it and subverting that in a different way. If we were to take art literally, and I believe Kneecap's manager said this so eloquently on his interview with RTE, that there are all sorts of people that you could pull up about this. The great one is, Johnny Cash did not kill somebody just to watch them die. Ziggy Stardust and David Bowie are not the same person. Subversive art, or art with hidden meaning or subversion within it, or subtext, is so important. Art as a form of protest is so important. If Kneecap were to be cancelled, and whatever that means in this world, but if they were to be taken off the list for Glastonbury, if they were to be stopped to be able to perform in art spaces in front of audiences who want to see them, that is worrying. Indeed, it would say to younger artists out there that you don't have a hope and don't do this. It would set a precedent that governments, politicians, as awful as they are, and they should absolutely stay away from anything like this, should have a say on who's on what lineup, or who's where, and who does what, or what art is. Think about that. Do you want that? Do you want politicians deciding what you can and cannot consume as art? Think about your local politician. Think about anybody in that sphere. Is that someone that you want to decide who plays what and who plays where? Or even somebody interrogating art at any sort of level? And I say that about any politician. I don't want them anywhere near this sort of thing, because I don't believe that they can get past literalism itself. Any engagement I've seen with the manager of Kneecap, with people sticking up for Kneecap, has been couched in literalism. Explain why you said this. Explain it in binary terms. Why did you say this? And when it was engaged as saying it was on stage as part of a performance piece, and the manager from Kneecap did not say situationism necessarily, but it evoked some of the same ethos. And the fact that any time that was attempted to be said, that it was met with pure just give me a yes or no, say this, because nobody's interested in the answer. And if nobody's interested in the answer, then it cannot be involved with art. Art is political. It always will be. Any sort of art you engage with has a political end to it. And that's important. We were talking once about, and this reminded me about how many years ago, the Sex Pistols themselves from the Irish diaspora, or at least Johnny Lydon from the Irish diaspora, once sang, "God save the Queen, you fascist regime." It was going to be number one, but it was taken off, and some say it was unfairly done so and made number two in order for it not to be the number one single during the Queen's Jubilee and a kind of a celebration of the monarchy. That this red-headed Irishman would be singing such an incendiary song about the English monarchy. Think now about BBC documentaries and documentaries about punk extolling the virtues of that generation and how they shook the foundations of the mainstream. How amazing it is. Again, there we are, where protest in the past is more preferable than protest in the present. Indeed, so it is. Sex Pistols are seen as kind of fun now. Johnny Lydon appears on reality TV shows and the like. But at the time, they were seen as dangerous. Kneecap now are being given the same treatment, far worse even, because it's in them now. And it makes us look at something that perhaps we don't want to look at. What is happening in Gaza, what is happening to the Palestinian people is genocide. It is collectivised punishment. It is the death of children. And you don't need me to tell you this. There's plenty of people saying it. There's plenty of videos out there showing it. The idea that this be shut down in an art space, in a space where we are allowed to protest, where we have a historical engagement with this. There is historical precedent for this. That is where folk music came from. That's where Pete Seeger and all those types of people came from. Imagine it if it was shut down. And I'm not just speaking to people who agree with me. Maybe you're watching this and you think, fuck you, you woke, whatever, and all the people who commented that. That's fine, whatever. I don't give a shit. I really don't. This isn't about me. It's not about Kneecap. It's about those people. But let's say you think all those things. Think about the precedent and think about the door that's being opened. We're saying, or we would be saying, that governments have the ability, or at least the influence, to decide what is performed and what is acceptable in performance spaces. And it would show Glastonbury for being something corporate. That Glastonbury of 40, 50 years ago is well and truly dead, and that corporate interest trumps it. I say, let the audience decide. I'm not going to speak to the people who run Glastonbury because they don't give a fuck about what I think, and that's fine. But I say, let them perform. And if they perform, let the audience react. Let the people decide, if you will. And let's see what people think. Let's see and let it be heard. Because I think they will be given a hero's welcome. It's a difficult thing, all of this. It's incredibly difficult, but you can imagine how difficult it is for the people of Palestine. A lot of us feel helpless. I do. Lots of us do. There's only so much people can march. There's only so much people can say anything. If the people in power continue to do what they are doing. What Kneecap did was disrupted that and brought it to a large scale for a moment. But the slaughter of those people continues. Art is a form of expression and a form of communication, and one of the tools we have with us. Herzog believes that art can't change the world, and I tend to agree, but it can influence those who can. We're at a precipice here, no matter what side you look at this on. Censorship is dangerous. I'm against it wholeheartedly. I once wrote a review of a band called Versatile, whose music I do not like. That review is up on the site and it's available for anyone to read, and I stand by every word of it. But in that review, I said that art is the fruit and the tree of our society. And if such rotten fruit shows on our tree, it says something about us. For the past 5 to 6 years, Irish art has shown something about us. Kneecap, Fontaines, Lankum, bands like that, Denise Chile. It said something good about us. You might be watching from another country and there might be bands that do the same. Idols last year at Glastonbury, what they did with Banksy. Do we want to live in a world where our art is pre-sanitised and pre-chosen? And this may seem like dramatic. It may seem completely over the top. But once that door is opened, anyone can walk through it. What happens next is uncertain, but even this moment, the possibility of cancellation sets a precedent. And it's one we need to talk about, because we can't claim to celebrate protest in music, then punish it when it lands too close to the bone. Whether you agree with Kneecap or not, the question remains, who decides what is acceptable in art? And what happens to the voices that don't fit that brief? I've said this before on the last mixtape, but it feels important to say again. I don't cover these stories because they're trending. I cover them because they show us what music still has the power to do. To reveal and to provoke. And so it goes, and there it went. But before I go, thank you for watching and listening to the last mixtape. To help the channel grow, please like, share and subscribe for more episodes like this. And if you want to send your music on to the Count and Monty playlisto, do send them on to stephen@thelastmixtape.com and I will send him on your correspondences. But for now, that was the last mixtape. I was Stephen White. You were the listener and the viewer. Hey, so long.